Welcome back. I'm going to talk a little bit more theory or questions about how we think about designing learning, and then get on to a practical example. We're just completing an Erasmus Plus project that looked at the use of online learning, MOOCs, flipped learning, and problem-based learning. So I'm going to talk about the problem-based learning bit towards the end of the presentation. So I hope that answers some of the, or at least generates questions about the practicalities of this. So again, I start with, is it a right or a commodity? So for me, the key question with all of this is what kind of society. So these are big questions. Okay, I acknowledge these are big questions, and they're philosophical questions. But if you're designing learning, then you need to do this. You need to think about these things. Otherwise, we just stay in the same pattern. So the key question, and I hope we can think of answers to these as we go along, and maybe talk about it at the end, is what kind of society do we want? Not only, not only at the national level, but at the local community level. So what kind of people do we want living with us? So do we want smart classrooms or smart people? Because I think we don't need smart classrooms if we have smart people. We certainly don't need to spend a lot of money on smart classrooms because we already have, everyone's got their own, haven't they? So yeah, so for me, we don't need a nice, we've got them at our university. Everyone says, go and show them the smart classroom. I go, why? Why? It's just tables that move and some screens. So anyway, so what's the purpose of education, smart classrooms or smart people? So does education develop the wrong skills? And this is by a guy called, predominantly by a guy called Yong Zhao, who's all over the internet. You can find him. He does a few TED Talks. He's a very interesting guy, quite funny. He says when he goes on a plane, he never tells anyone that he's a professor of education. He says, I'm a professor of astrophysics. He says, because everybody has an opinion about education. So he never gets any peace. So he's look him up, he's quite interesting. So he talks about people come into education with individual differences, multiple intelligences, cultural diversity, curiosity, passion, and creativity. And by the time they get to the age of 12, 13, they've learned the school game. They're no longer there, they just know what they need to do to pass the exams. And so schooling sort of does this to them. And then at the end, they've got these employable skills, but as we know, the employability may have changed, or the skills required may have shifted by the time they finish school, especially today with things moving so quickly. So that's another key question there. How can we develop the right things? So for example, in our university, if I want to make a modification to an assessment on a course, it takes 18 months to change one small thing. 18 months. And it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so next question, is digital disruption the only issue? Right, so we know what happened to the music industry with Spotify. It destroyed the music industry, although vinyl is coming back at the moment, so that's interesting. I have a friend who's a music producer. He said, I make more money out of vinyl than I do out of downloads. Great. So what is the higher education institutional response to the digital age? What is that response? What do we do about it? And predominantly, we do some of the things that Catherine's described earlier this morning. In my university, we do this. They send me this, we have this thing called Canvas, right? So the top left picture is Canvas, and it sends me alerts. It says, you have not completed your assessment deadline. You must do this or else by this date. So I feel like I'm being controlled or mechanized or turned into an industry. And that's my profile on Canvas, and that's my profile on LinkedIn. So you can see the degree of interest I have in Canvas compared to LinkedIn. This is so I can find out what people have done by date on Canvas, the bottom right. So it tells me, it gives me all these learning analytics. Why? Why do I need to know how many times someone's looked at a page or logged in? Why? I don't know. I don't understand why someone's giving me learning analytics. They're not learning analytics, they're just analytics. It doesn't tell me they've learned more just because they've come to a page 15 times, does it? And this is what I use for my course. This is Trello, which is a project management tool. But the purpose of Trello is to allow people to collaborate. So I do group problem-based learning in my course in Wolverhampton, and I use this because it's designed for people to collaborate. Its sole purpose is collaboration. The Canvas thing is designed to manage the students through their course for the course managers, predominantly. If there's anyone that works for Trello, don't sue me, okay? Not Trello, Canvas. Anyway, right, so another question then is memory versus application, okay? So when we teach, a lot of the exam system asks us to memorize things, and then we test people on them. So we have that, why would we have to memorize things when I can find them within a minute, the answer, yeah? So it's that just in case versus just in time. How many of you studied history? Did you study history in high school? Yeah, you all studied history? Okay. I studied history. I studied higher level history. And how much do you remember of your history? 100%? 50? 10%? 20%? Yeah. All I remember of my 2 years of studying medieval European history is that there was somebody somewhere, a prince, called Ottokar, and he had a pet lion. That's all I can remember. That's the only thing. So it's this just in case. And this doesn't mean this is bad and this is good, because you do have to have the basics. If you want to be a electronics engineer, you need to know that you don't want to electrocute yourself by plugging the wrong thing in. So you need some knowledge of things. But just in case versus just in time. So do we then, get the knowledge to solve a problem? Think about your daily lives, all the things you have to do. You have to, I go to YouTube. If I need to fix something, I go to YouTube, and I fix it through YouTube. I can fix it through YouTube because A, I know how to search. B, I know if the information is valuable or not to the thing I want to do. And C, I can understand it, synthesize it, and apply it. So when I want to fix the gears on my bike, I go to YouTube. So key question is, what is the role of the teacher in the digital environment? Are they a curator of mediated stuff that they say, that's validated, that's okay, find that, use this? Are they an expert? Or are they a facilitator of learning? Or are they all three of those, and possibly more? So that's the question. Then we have control. See? There's me here at the front, and I am in control, aren't I? Yeah? You're all being very conventional. You're not talking while I'm talking. Lots of students would be. So there's this idea of control versus agency. So lots of classrooms bore people to death. Yeah? People aren't engaged. But on the right of the picture, obviously technology has more agency. How many of you have students that are looking at their phones all the way through your lectures? Yeah? Because obviously the phone is much more engaging than you are. Some of you are probably looking at your phones now because they're much more engaging than I am, right? So it's that idea that there's more agency in technology because it gives you continuous feedback. So how do we get that same magical engagement and agency and control over learning in a more formal situation. So the key question is, how do we ensure that participants have some measure of control over their own learning? Because if they've got control over their own learning, that's good for lifelong learning, because they're learning how to learn and do things for themselves. So we're stepping aside and saying, you do it. We'll be there to help you and guide you, but you do it. Not me tell you how to do it. So that's another thing for the digital age. And then we have autocracy versus democracy. So most of our education establishments, it's really, really strange when you grow up in a democracy, as many of us have and done. When you grow up in a democracy, why are our schools then very autocratic? Why are they like dictatorships, where people are in control? One person's in control, one person grades you, one person does all this, and that kind of thing. So the key question there is, how do we move to co-design? How do we co-design education? How do we design learning that has input from students and from the experts as well to make everything more interesting? Should our higher education institutions be less autocratic? What does co-design mean? In the UK, all our students pay fees. They end up with £60,000 worth of debt at the end of their course after 3 years. And they've suddenly become customers. So their expectations are different. They think they're buying a product rather than having an experience. So they should be, the customer in business is always right, but in education, the customer isn't always right. In fact, the customer is often wrong. The student is often wrong. And they need to realize that just because they're paid for something doesn't mean that they can be right all the time. They can be wrong. So how do we make it then? How do we engage students in knowledge and transparency about what learning is about and how it works, and that you have to fail as well as succeed? So that, for me, that's quite a paradoxical kind of question, that we need to solve that in the way that we work with students, alongside students, rather than saying, this is the course, this is what you need to do, and you're going to fail, or you're going to pass. So how do we work together to do that? Now that looks like the same slide. It isn't. It's different. It's a different topic, but I've used the same images because I couldn't find any better ones. Okay. So this is competition versus collaboration. So this is quite interesting, quite an interesting thing. When do you get more competition? When you have interest in a topic, possibly, yeah. What I've discovered is you get more and lots of people will say this as well, you get more competition where everybody's trying to meet the same standard or reach the same goal. Because you've got to prove that you're best. You've all had to do that to get to where you are. You're all competitive, okay? So somehow we need to, because in business, you've got to be competitive, obviously, but you also have to collaborate a lot. And we need to learn the soft skills of collaboration. So for example, if I said to you, you need to solve an equation, by the time this talk finishes, you need to solve an equation, the mathematicians will be going, oh great, I can solve the equation, I'll do that, I'll be first. But if I said, and those that solve the equation all get $50, okay? But then if I said, okay, everybody in the room, to get $50, or to get everybody $50, everybody in the room has got to solve the equation, you would all become collaborative rather than competitive. Yeah? So it's quite an interesting thing about how you place the assessment can make people more collaborative or competitive. So if you say the whole group has to achieve, so if you have a group of people working on a project and the proof of success is that the project is successful and the whole group have to succeed, that becomes problematic because academics say, how do we assess everybody fairly then? How do we assess the individual contribution to the group? But you know as well as I do, if you've worked on a project, some people do more than others. And then some people get all the credit and some people, the credit is shared. So these are things that we need to learn and we need to build into our design. And we can build them in by thinking about the assessment that we do. How do we assess group collaborative projects? How do we do that? And it's not easy. And because we've got to classify people with a degree at the end, how do we also assess individual contributions to that group? Or do we say, like the Americans do, it's an honour system? I know that I've got to work on X, Y, and Z, and it's my job to know when I've achieved them, not someone else's job to validate them. So what causes competition? What would create more collaboration? And digital habits and practices, are they collaborative or competitive? And most of them are a mixture, but mostly collaborative rather than competitive. This is about assessment, and the key question, again, as I said earlier, are our assessments fit for purpose? And the tail wags the dog. You know the dog's tails wag like this? So no, but in this case, the tail is the assessment, and it makes the whole course wag. Yeah? So we need to change the assessment. If you want to make any change, we need to change the assessment strategy. If you want to change in pedagogy, if you want to change open spaces for different ways of doing things, there's no point doing problem-based learning and then giving everyone an exam at the end. Pointless. It needs to be about what have you produced? What problems have you solved? Was it successful? Have you made a difference in society? Have you solved the plastic bag situation in Serbia. Sorry, I'm very old. I remember before. I remember it all. I remember the cars and all that. Anyway, so are our assessments fit for purpose? So that's something, if you're going to design a practical program, that's where you need to start. You can do it within conventional courses. You can have different pedagogies within conventional courses, but to make it really, truly, reforming rather than transforming, then you need to change the assessment. And the diversity of assessment, it doesn't have to be an exam, it doesn't have to be written, it can be a video, can be a product, can be helping a company to solve one of their problems, can be helping homeless people, building new homes for people. It could be any of these things, designs. Exciting things, real things, authentic things. This is what would you like more of? This is for me actually. What would you like more of and what would you like less of? And this is from the Agile Learning and Teaching Manifesto, which is something we've been working on. So the things on the left, in our courses, what would we like more of? We'd like more practice than theory, although we quite like applied theory. It doesn't mean we don't like theory, we like theory, but we'd like more practice of that theory and application of it. Learner choice and agency over limitation and control. So you can, within reason, you can do whatever you like as long as it's productive. And if you have more choice, you have more diversity, you have more opportunity for the person that's good at doing graphics or the person that's good at doing mathematical equations to work together and produce something phenomenal, something amazing. So learning and applying skills over learning facts, although facts are important. Collaboration over competition, although competition has its place. Customization over standardization. So let's get different outcomes for the same course. Let's have people achieving different things that are just as valuable out of the same course. Co-constructed learning over teacher-led learning, because it's better. You get more input, you get more design, you get better ideas. And authentic real-world issues over artificial issues. When we were doing this transformation thing we did in Jordan and Palestine, we had a course where they'd done problem-based learning, and it was on. They had to make something, and the guy said, in 4 years of, I think it was computer engineering, this is the first time we have touched a breadboard and connected any components. First time we've done something practical. So that was the level of transformation. So then we've got to consider what skills and attributes do you think are needed? And there are lots of frameworks now for this. Everyone's going crazy about 21st century learning, but if you look at 21st century learning, it's pretty much very similar to 20th century learning and 19th century learning. The skills were very much similar, critical thinking, creativity, ingenuity, design, all that kind of thing. But there are lots of frameworks. So if you're going to design a course, let's think about those skills that sit behind the course, the soft skills, and let's assess those as well as the end product and the knowledge. And then I'm going to call the online learning platforms and the MOOCs and all the rest of it and the things as they become, not in the first intention. In the first intention, they were very open. But as they progressed, they become these closed citadels of industrialized education, production, and controlling things. Nice thing, that doesn't mean that nice things can happen inside them. So nice things can still happen inside the walls. But we need to break the walls and break some of the structures inside to make space for some of the things I've been talking about. So the agency, the control, the co-production, the collaboration. The tools are inside these structures, but we need to do it. We need to be that change, in the words of Gandhi. I always like to get Gandhi into a talk because I don't know. So an example. So this is the example. Now we're going to the example. So we had a project in Jordanian, all the Jordanian universities and the Palestinian universities, and this was in conjunction with 6 other European universities, and we were trying to, they were very traditional universities, very good courses, very high level of skills. We were trying to try different things inside them. And so we tried MOOCs, flipped learning, and problem-based learning. And on a scale of engagement, the MOOCs were here, and they're useful in terms of getting the raw materials to use in other methodologies. And also when they put problem-based learning inside the MOOC is very good too. So I'm not ruling anything out. I'm not saying MOOCs are bad or flipped learning is better than X or Y. It's just what are we doing inside those structures? What can we do different that makes a difference to the way they learn and how they learn and their motivation and their engagement? And it's in our hands. We can change assessments. We can use different pedagogies. So this is about the PBL because the PBL had the biggest effect and it's really the easiest to do. It's a zero cost project. Obviously it helps if you have money, but if you have no money you can still do it. So the problem's the starting point in the learning process or solution or learning design. They can be, so you've just got to problematize it. You've got to think about your course and think, well, how would I write this if it was a problem? How would that happen? So complex problems that don't have a single correct answer, often based on real life problems. Learners should build on their own experiences and learn through active engagement. What we found was that we had to really scaffold the problem element. So there's a structure to problem-based learning. So research the problem, think of solutions, try them out, reiterate, come back to it and do it again. But we had to really scaffold that for learners. So we had to start with what are the problems in your life, what are the problems in your local environment, how are you going to solve them, what are you going to do, how are you going to research them. So you start with something concrete and then go on to other things. There are several PBL models. We have an academic model, the mixed model, and the entrepreneurship model. And as you can see, they have varying degrees of control. So the control is teacher-led, teacher and student collaboration, the middle column, and student-led. So there's a continuum. So you can still keep, because one of the big problems in any of this learning design, one of the biggest problems is risk. Risk to you, risk to your faculty, risk to your results, risk to your identity, because you're still an expert, but your identity changes. You become a facilitator or you become a colleague with the students. So there's all sorts of identity changes that go on as well, human factors in the change. So this is important. Another way of looking at it is design-based learning. So we need students to empathize with things in their environments, with the community, with issues. Not think, oh, that's the government's job to solve that, or if I pay more taxes, that will be solved, or these people should be arrested and taken off the streets. It's really, can we empathize with the issue? Can we empathize with the problem? Can we define the problem? Then we think of solutions, ideate, prototype, test. Okay. In all of these things, then you need also some way. Educators often forget the skill of project development. So this is one way of developing products or projects, is the Scrum Agile system way of doing things, which fits with design. So what we're trying to do now in Palestine and other places is train students in project and product development techniques so they have a real marketable skill, but it's focused on local issues in their community, so problem solving or problem solving on their course. So we're actually giving them, we think, giving them the skills to actually manage products and projects and problems that arise from the problem-based learning is a good thing to do, rather than just say, there's a problem, go fix it. So this is an example from Birzeit University, which is in Ramallah, in Palestine, which is it's a very high-end, it's a top-listed university. So this is how it started. This is where I got the chairs from. This is the classroom when it started. That was the problem. It was a simple problem put on the board. I don't understand it because I'm not a computer engineer or anything like that. I'm just a simple humanist. And then the guys started researching it and working on the answer. The lecturer added an extra bit to it to make it more difficult. And then within 15, 20 minutes, they were describing a solution and telling all the rest of the class, and they all came up in groups. And at the end, this was what the smart classroom looks like at the end, of the smart people collaborating together. So problem-based learning, if you embark on the path of problem-based learning, it's really about setting free magic. So you become magicians, because the magic happens when people work together around the problem. This is some of the things that people said about their problem-based learning, and this was across several courses. There was ecology, and there was computer engineering, there were some humanities subjects, business, tourism, all sorts of things. So it taught me research skills, the brown one. I should look for information myself and not depend on my teachers. This was really important for me. To think and build something on your own is important. The exams were a chore where I had to study all the things I had already done with a paper and pen. The exam wasn't relevant to the things I had done. The project itself, the output, is a better exam. And these are the students saying this in a focus group. They weren't prompted, they weren't selected, they just gushed. They came, wow, fantastic. Most of them said, wow, this was the best experience I've ever had at university. I'm not kidding you, I'm not making it up. I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting them to say, well, it was okay, but it was a lot of work. And they did say it's a lot of work. It's really hard, a lot of work. But they'd never worked so hard. The tutor was like a team leader and a colleague. There wasn't the usual barrier. There was no formality. It was easy to communicate. And then the ones on the bottom are the teacher ones. So the teacher says, my role changes from a teacher, a supervisor, and a consultant. And the one in the middle, this guy, he'd been teaching for 20 years. And he actually said, I was shocked that they understand so well, and I have become a good teacher. They all come to my classes because they stopped coming to his classes. He said, now everybody wants to come to my class. So it's more interesting, it's more engaging. The biggest change for me is how to overcome students' disengagement from the material, ways to increase motivation. The results were great, so I focus on that. So he actually got this guy, all his grades went up as well. Right? So, and people were more engaged. But it was the same subject matter. But he just problematized it and said, you go and solve it. Here's the resources. And he said, another one said, it was great because now I don't have to prepare my class for next year because the students have found so many great resources and extra topics and more things, then I now have my course ready for next year. So it's worth the effort, although I don't think it can be done everywhere. It can probably be done in certain courses. You can't do it everywhere unless you think about your curriculum. Is my curriculum too big? Do I have too many courses? Can I not focus more things on smaller areas? So there's all sorts of parameters that can be investigated once you have a go. But you need to have a go in a low-risk area or a low-risk thing, or you just need to be a risky person to try. And then They've taken it on a little bit further because, as you know, in some of these countries there are quite big problems. And so they've designed at BS8 this whole ethos, this whole philosophy about what education should be. So education that's based on, and this is from their context. Obviously, your context will be different, my context is different. Their context is a context of occupation. They haven't got many resources, so their values are about community and collaboration. So education that's based on moral values, supporting human dignity, principles of democracy and human rights. Education which transcends individual gains of immediate successes or depends on maximising growth and productivity. You could see I would never get elected in the UK if I was the education minister for the opposition, right? Because if you said this is not what people want. So education that promotes community interaction and social cohesion and aims at building an integrated and mutually supportive society capable of achieving community development. That's their manifesto, if you like, for their development. Everybody has to have their own. It can't be standardized. And this is their wheel of activity. So learning that is creative, critical, problem solving, employability, cooperation, negotiation, decision making, personal empowerment, communication, resilience, self-management, respect, and active citizenship as well. So they have a 3-year program. First year is about learning about yourself. The second year is learning to work with others, but it's all based on problems and projects. And the third one is working with the community, with the wider community, and engaging with the community. So that's their program. And finally, we go from, so basically, learning with human agency is disruptive, it's digital, it's also analog. So there's a digital element, and because you go away and you do your digital stuff, and that might be in a MOOC or another platform or wherever it is. And then there's the face-to-face stuff and the doing things together stuff. And in the end, we end up with humans that are quite agile and they can adapt with circumstances. They have a large range of skills. They're more confident, more resilient, more engaged. So, finally. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe we can open the floor for questions. We do have them in Serbian, so yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Is it working? Is it okay? I am Bisera Gušovac from Faculty of Organizational Sciences, okay. And I wrote some notes, right. Just in case. So you mentioned in the earlier session something about specialization in education, and is it okay or not okay? And my question is, are we going towards, I don't know if you have looked at watched the series Divergent. Are we going towards a society like that, where we have kids at 11 or 12 years, where they choose, or somebody else is choosing for them their future role in the society? And today we are going towards specializations also in academic institutions, with dual education and more practice, and without any philosophy or some questions about well-being, about ourselves, about other people. And to mention, I'm teaching operations research that are quantitative methods, and I would really like to talk with my students about something else, because when they go out from the faculty, something about linear programming, I don't know, everything, yes, it's the concrete, it's the basis for them, but they have to use it in some other cases. So it's just something I would like to talk with you, to explain to us about that. Thank you.
So to take it in parts, the first part, Should people be decided what they're doing at 11? Absolutely not. You know, and if you look at a lot of the people who've gone on to do other things, they started off as, you know, I don't know, computer programmers, and they ended up as concert pianists, you know, that kind of thing. The second thing about specialization in universities, I think, yes, specialize, by all means specialize and stay with subjects, but also come together to solve problems, or give them the opportunity to come together with other people from different disciplines, so you get multi-functioning teams that have to do the talking together, the working together. You know, we need to look after each other to be able to be productive. Yeah. It could be, or it could be collaboration within a faculty with different elements of the faculty, or it could be collaboration with, it could be, The one in BS 8 is cross-functional. So they take everybody from every faculty and put them together and make them work on projects together. So you have an artist, you know, a literature, historian, technical programmer, whatever, put them together, make them solve a problem. Okay.
Hello
again.
Yeah. My name is Dejan Pavlović. I'm teaching, among other things, human rights. When you were describing your teaching in Jordan and Palestine, you employed various words such as togetherness, collaboration, and everything. And in your pictures, we can see that your female students and your male students are totally segregated. So there is not much of a collaboration, and because you were discussing.
This is a good point, but I do have other pictures where they are.
But please employ them, because you're sending the wrong message.
These particular guys had actually been working together for quite a long time, but if you see the other pictures, I will employ them. But in the other pictures, you'll see that predominantly most of the students are women in these courses now, which is very interesting, because they're all, these courses, the science courses are mostly women. Over 70% are women, which is, but I understand what you, Thank you. I will do that.
Do you have any more questions? Okay, yeah.
It's a question about collaboration or competition. Well, collaboration and competition. Our inventor, Nikola Tesla, tried to collaborate on Technical University Graz with his professors and with his ideas. But they just reject to take in opinion the ideas. Then he went to Prague with same results, then go to New York, to state, and try to himself to do everything. And he succeed. That means sometime and very often the best idea are coming for one head. That means collaboration could just smash this best idea. In programming, you have some statistical idea that results could be 1 to 50. In group, one could write one line, and another is sometimes 50 lines. Yeah. That collaboration needs to some mitigation of, let's say, results or going down. It is a question, collaborate or compete. And on the end, competition is runs the world.
Yeah, well, just because it's around the world doesn't mean it's a good thing. But it's a very good question. I don't think it's a binary choice. I just think there's too much competition and not enough collaboration. So I think if you can create spaces where you can have both, then that's a good thing. So I'm not saying competition is bad. I'm just saying perhaps we need more collaboration in general. And there's always an exception to the rule. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's an excellent question. Yeah.
Hello again.
Hi.
I would just like to add to this discussion that collaboration and competition are the two ends of the biological. It exists in the biological world. We are all competitive and all collaborative. One cannot go without the other. Yeah. So they go hand in hand. I mean,
I think my point about competition in education is more about standardization. So if everyone, because you can't have all winners and no losers. And all our education systems are designed like this, for winners and losers. So you can't have everybody getting an A. It's not possible. But you can if you have collaboration. It's, as you say, we could debate this for a long time. So, and it would be very interesting. But I think we have other things to do.
Yeah, also, but a voice from sociology, sorry, I promised myself not to, but
See,
then they go...
Everybody's an expert on education, which is great.
See, no, but on society maybe, but then they go into the world that is competitive, highly competitive, that will tell them, okay, who solves the equation gets the money. So it's the world they're getting into now, or they're changing the world by the...
I think there's probably people would disagree with that in terms of the people that talk about high-performing teams. So, you know, it wasn't one person that got the Apollo, what was it, which was the Apollo mission that went wrong? Or the ones, it wasn't, 13. It was a team that got the Apollo thing onto the moon. It wasn't one person, yeah.
No.
And like a Formula One racing car, it's not the driver. It's all the other people behind, you know. A rugby team, they all take the ball across together, don't they? So, yeah, but then there's the relay team where one person goes across the line. So it is, as our colleague said, it's you can't have one without the other. But I think in a lot of industries now, it is about working in a team. And sometimes you have to give up your ego. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest problem, giving up your ego to be able to function in a team.
On that note, any more questions? No?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
very
much.
much.